Alrighty, we are go time. Hope reach as many people as we can. Gonna wait like 30 seconds or so, see who's gonna jive on there with us. Hi, it only says Facebook user, so I'm not sure who this is, but thanks for joining. Um, it is the New Year, fresh start, January 6th, 2023. So excited to be here. Hi, Annette. Thanks for jumping on. Love that avatar that you put on my post today. That was fantastic. It's probably the best one I've ever seen. Hey, Mary Beth. Thanks for joining. So, for those of you who entered 2022 with me, you know that my last two lives, we took a really deep dive. And my goal and promise is to continue to show up sharing more of myself, because I certainly am breaking that cycle of not doing that, and weaving it into the topic that I'm going to be talking on where it's appropriate. So, as the title says today, this one thing will break your bad habits. Now, this one thing used regularly for every single bad habit you want to break will help you break them. So it's not that you can just do it one time. It's not that you can just, do it for one thing. So if you have several bad habits that you want to um, break and you no longer want to do, you're going to have to do this over and over again with each habit. For instance, um, before I became a mom, I used to smoke like 2, 3 cigarettes a day, right? Like, still terrible, but not, not a pack a day or whatever. And I didn't want to smoke anymore. So I cut out one cigarette a day, and I cut out that one cigarette a day for like 7 days. Um, Once I found out I was pregnant, I didn't smoke at all. But um, in order to change or break a habit, it is crucial that you do it in small, bite-sized pieces. If you try to go too big, you're going to go, I don't know where I'm stepping into. This is uncharted territory. What the hell? And you're going to go right back to your comfort zone, right? This applies to whatever habit it is that you're doing that you want to change, right? Whether it's emotional eating, whether it's talking yourself out of exercising, like I'm really good at doing, right? Um, it doesn't matter. Addiction, it doesn't really matter what the bad habit is. A bad habit can also be considered an addiction to something, right? So if your bad habit is drinking, 72 liters of Pepsi every single day, that's a bad habit. And some would say you're addicted to sugar, right? So again, use the strategy that I'm going to share. You're going to have to use it for each bad habit you want to break, each change you want to make. This is a very simple strategy that you can do, right? So it's 7 steps. And this is the first step to breaking a bad habit. And if you do this first step, your bad habit will decrease over time. Sometimes your bad habits could decrease cold turkey, right? You may be like, yeah, I'm just done with that. Like, um, I one time worked with someone who um, couldn't stop consuming like large amounts of chocolate, right? So they were that, amongst other things, they were considerably overweight. They wanted to lose good amount of weight, right? Um, but chocolate was the hardest thing for them to give up. So that's the first thing they went after. And I was like, well, whatever. Like, if you think you can handle your big one, like, let's just go after your big one, right? So we worked through a series of weeks where this person was able to decrease the amount of chocolate she was eating. So she had an allotted amount of chocolate each day. And then after 7 days, she decreased it just a little bit more. But the thing that she did once she stopped eating chocolate, that she came up with this all on her own, which I think is genius, right? She Her last day of eating chocolate, right? And now I haven't worked with her for a long time, so I don't know if she's gone back to eating chocolate or not, but um through the follow-up years of me working with her after that, she still was, chocolate free. And subsequently went on to break her sugar consumption, right? On her very last day of her allotted chocolate consuming, she took, I'll never forget this, she took her favorite chocolates, she melted them all down, she made like a bigger chocolate, right? And and she went in the backyard and she dug a hole and she had a goodbye burial to chocolate. But what she also did was she convinced herself that chocolate was like poop and that consuming poop was unhealthy. So she shouldn't consume chocolate, right? She like almost like self hypnotized herself, but she legit had like a burial for her, I don't know how big it was. I'm just using this for reference, right? Her, her chocolate that she melted down in this big chocolate ball that she created, right? So that sense of like ritualistic um, is very helpful. Um, Oftentimes, when I work with people, when they're working on letting things go, I always say, like, find some way to say goodbye to something that is meaningful to you. And those are the steps that I help people um, who work with me to be able to do, right? Right? Because everybody's path is different. We're all not really not that unique, but our paths are different. How we got here are different, similar but different. So our letting go process um, oftentimes is different. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer. So this one thing that you're going to start doing if you want to break a bad habit is it's 7 steps. So first of all, before you even do any of this, you need to identify your triggers, right? That's the first step in breaking a bad habit is to identify the triggers. And what I mean by triggers is what is going on externally, right? That is causing you to think and feel a certain way. That's what I mean by a trigger, right? People may have different definitions of triggers, but that's what I mean by a trigger. What is going on externally that is leading you to feel a certain way, right? You'll oftentimes hear me refer to this as the seeds that were planted, right? So I'll give you guys an example of my client last. I actually did a post about it, which it was just a great session, right? Um, So that's the first thing to do before you do the next 7 steps is to identify your triggers. So for example, if you're an emotional eater and your go-to is chocolate, right? That sugar, that sugar rush that we get, um, and all of that stuff, right? But then it also comes with the shame and guilt afterwards if you eat too much, maybe even a caffeine headache, whatever. So if your bad habit is reaching for an unhealthy food in times of emotional heightened situations, right? Then you want to identify like what is it about that external event that caused your emotions to become heightened, that caused you to go for your emotional comfort hug, right? Hopefully that makes sense to people. So you're going to identify that trigger. You may have multiple triggers, right? But identifying that is also going to lead you back to the seed that was planted as to why that's an external trigger now, right? So, step number one to defining, has anybody joined me on FUD? I'm streaming on multiple platforms. Nobody's on FUD. So, the step number one is to define the habit that you want to break, right? So again, if your habit is emotional eating, what is it that is your go-to? And what's the external events that cause you to have that influx of emotion that causes you to go towards whatever choice of food that might be, right? Take some time with this. Be patient with yourself. Write about it, right? Don't journal. Journal is for good things. Write about it. Write your thoughts down. Get it on paper, right? Get it out. Get it out of a rock, right? Once you define the trigger, so that external event that causes an increase in internal feelings, you're going to identify your trigger. Sorry. The first one was define your habit. The second one, define your trigger. I think I said that wrong. Identify your trigger, right? So your habit might be you go and give yourself an emotional hug by grabbing, a Snickers bar. And what is the trigger? So what is the external event that causes that habit, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that didn't confuse you guys, because I think I said it wrong. I was confusing habit and trigger. Maybe I didn't. I don't really know. But if I didn't, then just ignore me. So step number 3 is identify why that habit and that trigger is reinforcing, and what is it reinforcing, right? So we as human beings only continue to do things that benefit us, right? Even if the outcome is negative, even if it causes shame, guilt, whatever it might be, right? Oh, awesome. Thanks for joining, Charita. I think this is the first live I've seen you on, so thanks for joining. I appreciate it. Um, so again, so we as human beings, we like to be comfortable, right? Even if we don't like the comfort, we like to be comfortable because the unknown over there is really scary, right? Um, Even though it might be what you really want. So identify, you got to define your trigger. You're going to define the habit, define the trigger, and then you're going to figure out what benefit you're getting from doing that, right? So maybe eating that chocolate bar reminds you of someone that you loved, right? Maybe someone that you loved used to um, maybe they're I'll give you an example. I can't think of how I want to word it. So let me give you an example. My grandmother, who was my heart and soul until I had kids, every single time I went over to see her, are you hungry? Did you eat? You want something to eat? Can I get you something to eat? You want something? I have this, I have that, blah, blah, blah. And she would list off everything she had in her fridge, right? Now, my grandmother didn't cook. She cooked maybe one, two, she cooked 2 things, right? That is far, 3 things, as far as I can remember, consistently. She was a takeout queen. But when you went to her house, her way of doing something for you was through food, right? So maybe that's why, now this is just an example, maybe that's why your habit is going to give yourself an emotional hug via food, right? Maybe that's how you were nurtured as a kid, right? So that's where it came from. So that's why it's important to identify the trigger. And again, I'm just using food as an example, just because it's easy to do. Um, and I have a lot of examples that I can give everyone. So then, once you've done that stuff, her love language was feeding people, because she loved food and she loved junky food, right? She spent, and I asked her one time, I said, Ma, why do you, because she would, oh my God, she would have so much food in her house, right? Like, we don't, I mean, I live in Massachusetts. We have food stores every quarter of a mile. Like we are not without resources, right? But she grew up during the Depression. So she went hungry a lot as a kid. And when I asked her, I was in my early 20s. I asked her, I said, "Why do you always want to feed me? Do I look like I'm starving?" Right? I mean, I was healthy, right? When I was in my 20s, healthy, like whatever. Um, and I said to her, "I've been thinking about this. Did you go hungry a lot as a kid?" And she looked at me. My grandmother never talked about growing up. Never, ever, 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 ever did she talk about anything emotional related. Never talked about her family growing up. Never, like, she was like look forward and move on kind of person, and then just carried all that shit with her, right? Um, but she looked at me and she's like, "Yes, I did. I grew up during the Depression and we were hungry more times than we weren't." And I'm like, "Well, then that makes sense. That makes sense that you are like she would be eating breakfast and be like, 'What's for lunch? What are you cooking for dinner?' Like her whole entire world was so focused on not being hungry. So she perceived caring for other people by feeding them, right? So she never broke that habit, and she didn't want to, but whatever. But her understanding that she was constantly asking people if they wanted food was her way of caring for people that wasn't done when she was a kid because she grew up in the Depression, right? So that's why it's so important to understand the triggers, the external triggers that contributed to that seed, right? They're important. So, step number 5 is really important. You want to keep track of when you kind of slide back, right? You want to keep track of when externally you're triggered again to go running towards that bad habit, right? Keep track of that stuff because everything we do, even if it's unconscious, everything we do is purposeful. Everything. So keep track of that stuff. Be like, "Yeah, you know what? Today I don't know. Today I X, Y, and Z. So I went and ate 3 chocolate bars, right?" You gave yourself an emotional hug, right? Figure out why. When you break it down, when it's in plain written form, then you can look back on it and be like, "All right, I don't want to do that anymore," right? Give yourself some kindness. Give yourself a lot of kindness because we go through life doing things that we're not even aware of most of the time why we do them, right? This is called building insight. So, yeah, Trita, it is deep. I tend to go pretty deep because even though my focus online is mindset for entrepreneurs and building an online business, if we don't go deep, it's only surface level. And that is setting anyone up who comes into my world to fail. And I absolutely will not do that. I will not be part of setting someone up to fail. So the deeper I can share things, the deeper I can share those seeds, where they come from, how they grow, then the better equipped everyone who comes across my lives, everyone who comes into my coaching, everyone who comes into my group, everyone who comes more intimately into my world benefits from that. So it may not be now, it may be in 10 years, maybe in 10 months, maybe in 10 days. But um, I go deep. I go deep a lot. I do. I don't really know any other way to do it other than going deep. So um, be kind. Be kind to yourself. If you feel shame and guilt for the bad habit, all right? So let's flip it on its head and let's now apply this breaking a bad habit when it comes to online business, right? So you you have your daily plan, right? And there are two things on there that you don't enjoy doing. So you already know before your eyes open that there are two tasks that you have to do today that you do not like doing, right? So what are you going to do? You are going to talk yourself out of doing them. They're not going to get done. Your business is going to suffer for it. Shame and guilt are going to set in. You're going to mentally beat yourself up for it, right? Because um, here's another day that you didn't do it, right? And identifying what it is about those business tasks that you don't like, identifying why you don't like it, can help you flip it around and figure out a way to get it done without talking yourself out of not doing it. So it's about the emotional scarring. Absolutely, Charita. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Um, it's the emotional trash can that's what I call it. It's the emotional trash can that we all carry around. It's filled with, if you can visually think about like an emotional trash can, it has like all these compartments and shelves and bins and all of that stuff inside of it. And we put all the hurt, all the external hurt that we've been given, we put it in those bins and then we shut them, right? And then we carry it around in life. We do that because for some reason we were not given the tools to let that stuff go, right? And there's many reasons why that happens. So yeah, it's the emotional baggage, it's the emotional trash can. So um, I personally and professionally like things to be very simple. It doesn't mean that I'm not willing to work for things, but I like the process to be very simple. So in my business since 2006, I have refined my administrative duties throughout the years. And now with um, I only just adopted an electronic system in 2020. And I still do some of my administrative stuff on paper just because for tracking purposes, it's easier for me to do it that way. It's not an extra step by any means, but it's just a really good tracking system for me. I used to have a more complex paper tracking system. Um, and I know I could probably use like an Excel spreadsheet, but the thought of doing that makes me want to vomit. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick to my paper um, because it works for me. But my process is very simple. I have an appointment that I need to do billing for. So I highlight under that person's column, I highlight that date and I put a B for the billing is done. And then I write a P when it's paid, right? Very simple. Um, very simple. So I know there are a lot of tasks that a lot of people, you know, don't like doing. So one of them is a lot of people just do not like to write, right? A lot of people just maybe have a hard time um, putting pen to paper and writing down their thoughts or feeling like they can organize them in any sort of sensible way. And I'm actually gonna log off that. It doesn't look like anybody's even on there. Um, so very simply and ironically enough, so I don't remember exactly where the tip to do this came from. It came from someone in my online journey at some point in time. I'm not really quite sure who gave this tip out there, but is to just use voice to text on a Google Doc, right? And ironically enough, the other day when I was on the treadmill, I I popped on Mel Robbins' podcast that I'm listening to. Not sure what episode I'm on, but and ironically enough, on her podcast, that's exactly what she was talking about. She was talking about recommending for people that need to write for their business, but do not like it and find that it is a like a pain point, so to speak, and something that they tend to procrastinate or avoid doing. Um, that's what she said. She's like, turn on a Google Doc. I don't know if she called it a Google Doc, but use your voice with a texting app kind of thing and just talk to it. And I was like, actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I've been doing that. Now that I think about it, I've been doing that for a very long time. Because when I used to be an in-home therapist, I used to teach parenting and behavior modification for children of all different diagnoses and struggles and stuff. So I used to have to write these really complex behavior programs, and I did not like to. I'm not a fast typer, so I didn't like typing. I don't mind writing, but I don't like typing because I'm not proficient at it, right? And I don't want to learn how to be. Um, So I got what was called Dragon Speech, and it was a program, right? And it had a headphone, and it you synced your voice up to it, and all you had to do was talk. That was the best. So years. I mean, this was 2010, 2011 when I was doing this, right? Up until 2015. So, holy crap! I didn't remember that until now. Um, yeah. So I enjoy writing. I've always enjoyed writing. I've always enjoyed creative writing. I've just always enjoyed writing. I love reading. I love writing. Um, but I don't like typing. So in this online business, I create a lot of written content and I don't want to type it. So I open up a Google Doc and I hit the voice to text feature and I just talk away. And I don't remember who had recommended that because I had never used Google Docs before, but um, it's so funny, right? So there's always, and that's why it's so important to talk to people too, because there might be something and share your technique, share your strategy that you found, share it with people, right? Because if it helped you, it may help a lot of other people to not get into the bad habit of avoiding stuff in their business, right? So let's talk about um, one thing that you can do to break the bad habit of avoiding doing a daily task that you may prefer not to do, right? There you go. If you are not a fan of typing, but you have to write a lot of written content, Google Doc, microphone, and just talk. Just talk, right? Just talk away. Go back afterwards, pull it up on your phone, pull it up on your computer, whatever, edit it, fix it, move things around, highlight, bold, whatever you're going to do. If you want to get fancy and before you put it on Facebook and you want like really cool fonts and stuff like that, you know, just use from your phone, use the Facebook fonts, different websites that I think I just use Facebook fonts. I don't usually get fancy. I used to play around with it, but I really don't do that too much anymore. But um, so then you just copy and paste it, put it in there, it does some cool stuff. And if you have found that you've tried to um, do cool stuff like that in Google Docs, it doesn't, Google Docs and Facebook they don't speak the same like language. So when you try to copy it and then paste it onto Facebook, it loses all that cool stuff, right? Because it's not, their system isn't compatible and that stuff. So use Facebook fonts, right? Copy and paste it from a Google Doc, Facebook fonts, push it in there, get those cool little pictures, those cool little green check marks and X's and, all that fancy stuff that you see people doing. Um, And then from there, you can copy it and then put it onto Facebook, and it will capture all of those images, right? So breaking a bad habit of avoiding doing tasks in your online business, you can use those same 7 steps, right? So the number one first thing is to breaking the bad habit of avoidance is to identify the trigger, right? What is it? What is it externally that's going on that you're avoiding, right? Then you want to define the habit. You know, what is it that you do to avoid? Do you, I don't know, do you do anything else other than that, right? Do you go on TikTok and scroll for 7 hours? Or do you go watch Netflix? Or do you get on the phone and talk to someone? Like, what is it that you're doing that is replacing completing that task, right? So what is that? Um, and then you're going to define the trigger, right? So that's similar to identifying the trigger, is defining the trigger. And then step number 3 is identify if you're benefiting at all by not completing that daily task. Chances are, if it's a business related task, you're not benefiting at all by avoiding doing it, because it's not contributing to your business moving forward, right? It's keeping you stuck. It's keeping you frustrated. It's keeping you feeling like, I wasted all this money for nothing. These coaches are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. None of the people that I watch on YouTube know what they're talking about. This stuff is blah, blah, blah. And really, it's just your one bad habit that is creating all of this mess in your business because you're not doing it. So to break the bad habit of avoiding completing tasks, you want to do steps 1, 2, and 3, like I just said. And then you want to replace the action, right? So you want to find a way to modify that task in a way that it's something that you can do. Very similar to what I just said about Google Doc voice to text, right? If you're not good at typing. And you know what? If you have a hard time putting words to paper, if you have a hard time like organizing your thoughts, don't worry about it, right? Try the Google Doc thing first. I know there's a lot of AI things out there. Some people are choosing to use those, and from what I see, if you set the questions up very specifically with key points and touch points, you can actually end up with a beautiful piece of content. If that's the style you want to go do, if you want to use AI, then go use AI, right? Just make sure you're editing it to make sure it makes sense, right? That's another way that you can have a workaround completing longer form content, right? Um, it's replacing the action of avoiding by figuring out a way to get that task done, right? And then keep track of what you're doing. Write down what you're doing. Be like, oh, you know what? Like, I tried this website. I didn't really like it. Or I tried this website. I really did like it, right? And then if what you're doing is working for you, share it. Tell as many people as possible, right? Share it in your business. Do a quick 10-minute training inside your Facebook group, right? Go live on your profile, like create short form video, like whatever it is that you're doing in your business, share it, because what helped you could help so many other people, right? The time of holding every single tip, trick, and strategy like close to your, because someone should pay you to for that knowledge, no, no, just share it, right? Share it, because what you put out will always send back. And I know that's a little probably out there for some people, but that's my belief. So I'm going to share it. I believe that if you put out goodwill, if you put out positivity, then it comes back to you, right? It's just the way that my life works. So I truly believe it. So in order to break the bad habit of avoiding doing tasks that you need to do in your business for your business to be successful, step number one, define the habit. Step number two, define the trigger. Step number three, identify how you're benefiting from that avoidance, right? What are you getting out of it? Step number four, replace the action. Find a way to complete the task that's going to set you up for success. Keep track of what you're doing. Step number five. Step number six, just keep showing up every single day. And step number seven, don't give up on yourself. You will find the success you want. It may take many different iterations. It may take many different strategies. It may take months, right? So um yes, absolutely, Annette, document your journey, things that didn't work and why, and things that did work and why they worked, right? Why they worked for you and how they can work for other people. So interesting story. um Not interesting story, but just part of my story. So for anybody who's new on here today, you may not know that I have been an entrepreneur and I've worked for myself since 2006. So when I first started doing that, I wasn't flooded with people, right? Um, I had to work up to that. I had to work up my name. I had to work up my reputation. I had to work up, you know, basically client success, right? So it wasn't until I was in business for myself for about 2 years that my business just was like a well working machine. Clients were coming. I mean, it was actually less than 2 years, but 2 years is a nice round number. So um, l- later on in 2007, going into 2008, I started to get itchy professionally. I'm the type of person personally that could sit here and watch paint dry for 12 hours and be perfectly entertained. I have never once in my personal life been bored, right? Um, it's just how just how I am, right? Um, but professionally, I get bored. Professionally, I need to feel like I'm always doing something to grow. And professionally, the number one way I have found to do that is to work with people. So in late 2007, there were a couple of other therapists that I worked with at the agency I was working for, and they wanted to come and start their own practice, right? And they were asking me all sorts of questions. So brought them in. They started sharing my office space. I walked them through what they had to do, like all that stuff, right? Help them set up their business, get them going, and all that stuff. So I was able to help a lot of people stop being an employee, start being self employed. And to this day, every single one of them are still self employed, running their own business, right? Every single one of them. So that's something to be proud of. However, when the last person was finished needing like my support, my guidance, my supervision, like all that stuff, once they didn't need that anymore because they were up and running and finding success, I was like, well, now what do I do? Now I'm back to being professionally bored. So I would find something else to do. I would find another way to grow. I'd find another way to grow. I was never content just doing passionate about what I do, but I was never content just doing one like linear thing. I always felt like I had to be growing. So I would take different jobs, either part time employment or a contract position in a different area that I didn't have any experience in to gain experience so I could be as well rounded as possible. So finding what drives you, finding what fuels your engines, finding what keeps that passion for online business going is really important. And the point of all this, which I forgot until a second ago, the point of all this is I was listening to, I don't even know what it was, a training, or I don't even know what it was. I was listening to something recently, might have been a book, I'm not really sure. And they said it takes 2 years of consistently showing up, consistently doing and adapting and modifying your business plan. 2 years consistently doing that before you start to find comfort in that success, meaning it's starting to feel like it's a second skin, right? It's starting to feel like you're not like walking uphill carrying an elephant on your back any longer. So that was a good reminder for me, because anyone who knows me knows that I started this in 2021. However, I didn't shift to my focus until July of this year. So it's only been 5 months. Hasn't been that long. So I'm an infant in my growth, an infant. So I hope that this was extremely helpful for those of you who stayed on and jived with me. And Annette and Charita, I'm not sure if you guys are still here. Let me see. Mary Beth, I'm not sure if you're still here. Whoever is still on here with me, do you have any questions? Um, any any takeaways from today? Anything that kind of hit in a different way that maybe you were surprised about? Anything that you'd like me to elaborate on, expand upon before I end for today? I know that was a lot, and some of it was pretty deep. Oh, good, Trina. I'm glad it was quite helpful. Um, I'm trying to find a consistent day and time that I'll be going live. I'm thinking it's going to be Fridays at 1. Um, I'm thinking it's going to have to stay Fridays at 1. Because I usually leave Fridays as a day of no work, um, meaning like coaching and stuff like that. So um, I'm thinking that to I start off my week with my coaching clients. Um, so I'm thinking of ending my week doing these lives. So um, yeah, absolutely, Melinda. The replay will be in the group. Check it out if you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to drive on. Send me a message. Put it in the group. I'll check it and see it. Just tag me. Um, Send me a direct message if you want. If we're not friends on Facebook, friend me, follow me, whichever. You can send me a direct message. Be more than happy to drive on that as well. What did your mom used to do, Trita? My grandmother she was my world. She was my soft place to land. She was my heart until I became a mom. And she did lose a few steps when I became a mom, but you know, um, you're welcome, Trita. Yeah, I I do, like I said, I do go live every week, and I until Nate reminded me, I hadn't realized that I wasn't sending out the invitations. So I remember to always do that. That way, everyone knows that there's a live event coming up, and then you get reminders too. Um, awesome, good, Annette. I'm glad this was helpful, and I like to, as you know, Annette, because you were always on these lives with me, so you kind of know um, my style. Um, I like to go personal. I like to go professional, and I like to give examples on how you can use it for both. So She had to share shoes with her sisters. Very common. Absolutely. Very common for families to have to like make sure everything got the most use out of it as possible. Like, you know, sharing down clothing um, to your younger siblings, right? That way you didn't have to buy new clothes if you couldn't afford to or whatever, you know. She treated herself to a pair of shoes every payday. That's a lot of freaking shoes. Did she keep them all? Or did she like get rid of shoes as like she didn't like them or pass them on to someone or that's a lot of shoes. Well, even if she got paid twice a month, that's 2 pairs of new shoes every month. It's 24 a year. That's a lot of pairs of shoes. Not to say that I don't have a lot of pairs of shoes because I do, but um and most of the time I only wear sneakers. I like that, Annette. Um, I tend to do both business and both personal simultaneously because one does affect the other for me. Um, maybe it's the same or maybe it's not the same for you, but um, I have also found something going back to, um, sorry for eating too, um, going back to always feeling like I have to be growing professionally. My schedule has changed and shifted a little bit because of my kids' schedules. So I have a little bit more time during the day where I'm not working because I've just shifted things around to maximize my working time. And I find on the days where I'm slow, actually working with people to help them achieve their goals, I find that those are my least productive days. When I am working with someone to help them achieve their goals, my drive is like 95 miles an hour. If I have a day off and like my kids are at school or I'm not engaged somehow, I find my drive is like 2 miles an hour. So um, that's interesting. I bet that really hit your heart when you realized why she had so many pairs of shoes. Was she, interestingly enough, was she aware of that's why she had so many pairs of shoes? Was because she didn't have her own growing up? Or did she just think she liked shoes? So today for lunch, I had, as part of my healthy meal prep, good food I should be eating, even though I had a piece of carrot cake last night, but don't tell anyone. Um, I made a ground chicken and ground turkey meatloaf on Sunday, and I like it cold. I don't like it hot. So today for lunch was a piece of that, which is two servings of my protein, and then I had an avocado. You don't believe that she did realize. It's funny because most people do not realize why they do what they do. Um, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. Carrot cake. Yeah. So here's the thing about that, Annette. I went, I had to go to my office last night to work in person with people. And I was like, ooh, I want a grilled chicken salad from my favorite. I haven't been going out to eat or anything like that for a long time. I'm like, I want a grilled chicken Greek salad from my favorite place. So I'm like, I'm going to stop on my way to work, right? And they have all these delicious desserts right in the front case. and the carrot cake was just going, Colleen, Colleen, you need to eat me tonight. So I couldn't leave it in there. Just couldn't leave it in there. So it was thankfully it was just like a really tiny, like really tiny piece. It wasn't like a big, huge piece like you can sometimes get. So I don't feel bad about it. Whatever. I don't feel bad about it. I'm back on today. So no, I didn't. I didn't. Because when I got home, my son wanted to watch the show that we're watching on Netflix. So I did that until 10 o'clock and then I went to bed. So, oh, thank you, Rita. I appreciate that. Good. I'm glad. And I'm hopeful that, what I shared today is going to help you and help anyone else who comes across your path that you share that with. Oh, that's funny. That's what chocolate does to you. I know, that's why I needed an accountability group. However, I did just speak with my personal trainer. I had to stop working with my personal trainer. However, I have worked with her for a really long time, and she, through the past 2 years, she's had a lot of stuff come up. And because of everything that happened in the world, she had to close her gym down because, for a very long time, gyms weren't able to be open. So she wasn't quite sure what she was going to do with that. She went back to personal training at her house. She went back to people's houses, and then she did some other things just to get some money coming in or whatever. But an opportunity fell in her lap, and she went full force, and she opened her gym again in a new location, much smaller than what her previous gym was, and much more. It's going to be much more manageable. So I'm going to be working with her to take her in-person business online as well. Her head wants to explode when I talk to her about marketing and everything that she can do with that. But I'll get her there. So, so I was talking to her, and because I had to stop working with her in person, she is insisting, because I'm going to be helping her with her marketing stuff, she's insisting that I join her Zoom classes, and she's not going to charge me for them. So I was actually just talking to her about that. So I will be adding that 2, 3, 4 times a week. Oh, thank you, Trita. I appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully I'll see you next Friday. I'll be on here again talking about the next topic that we're going to talk about. So, but I do have to run. I got to go get my daughter from school. I drove her today because of the snow. Didn't want her driving home in case it was too crappy. She's never driven in snow yet, and we'd much prefer to get her comfortable doing that in the back neighborhood. So, but again, if anyone has any questions, any comments, whatever, put them in the group, tag me so I get a notification, and I'll go in and check them. So thanks for hanging out, everyone. I appreciate it, and I'll see you all next week. Have a great weekend.